All right, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for post-game coverage of the Mets versus Phillies Game 2 of the National League Division Series. Now, before we get into all the details, like always, I have to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for live recordings of the Mets Weekly Podcast, which is this as of right now, following every single postseason game during the Mets playoff run. For those of you watching live or on playback and you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now and you want to give us your comments, we love reading them. We love reading your questions, your concerns, especially after a game like today. I'm sure there's tons of comments today. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show. So we'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, where we just wrapped up Frank's post-game thoughts for every Mets regular season game. And we will have some content for that during the off season. But as for right now, for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. And for those of you tuning in on audio right now in the future, make sure to tune into our pregame shows they're around 90 minutes before each playoff game that will be going on all Mets postseason long, but only on our YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get into our post-game show, as well as episode 92 of the podcast. Let's just say it was quite a turn of events in Philly for Game 2. There was a lot of lead changes. There was a lot of momentum that shifted back and forth, but the Mets ended up being on the short end of it, losing 7-6 in the bottom of the ninth. The Phillies walked it off. The Mets kept as much pace as they could, hitting a lot of home runs today. But the Phillies just ended up getting that final laugh, taking Game 2, tying this one up, taking it to Game 3 at Citi Field. Frank, I'll go to you with your overall thoughts going into this post game before we get into the specifics. What do you think? What did you see from this game in general?
Yeah, like you said, a lot of lead changes, a lot of different things going on here. I mean, I think overall, when you see the Mets making their comebacks and taking the lead, you kind of felt like they were going to win it, to be honest, just because we've seen this story so many times lately in this postseason where it looks like they're down, but then they make that late comeback at the end. And you felt like once they did, that they were going to be able to pull it off. But really, they weren't able to. And a lot of it really just goes down to the pitching missing on locations. Obviously, Severino missing the fastball right down the middle to Bryce Harper, and he just absolutely destroys it. And then at the end, Tyler McGill hanging the slider. So it's just those little mistakes when you go up against the really good players that they don't miss them and they take advantage of them and take advantage in a big way. Walks, things like that, putting extra traffic on in front of them definitely is an issue. And overall, for the most part, you saw a lot of guys for the Mets contribute and hit the home runs, which was great to see, obviously led by Vientos. But then you have some other guys in the outfield who really struggled and left a lot of men on base. And it's just a bit of a black hole in one particular position. But I just think overall, I'm glad that like Alonso continued doing his thing, Nemo's doing his thing, Lindor getting in front of Vientos. Vientos having a monster game as a young player. Like I said, this first playoffs for him. And he just looks so calm, cool. Like no matter maximum pressure, late in games against all-star level pitching, still doing really, really well. And I just think for the Mets, it's still encouraging how no matter what, they're keeping it to the bitter end. You know what I mean? Like if they won this game, they've been an absolutely golden opportunity for the rest of the series. But I just think still here going into Philly and being this close on multiple occasions and just being like it feels like a pitch away in certain instances. They really, really almost had this one. But like I said, I'm just proud of like how no matter how many times they got down, they kept like bringing it back and bringing it back. And I just think overall, it's kind of one of those that even though you lost, it shouldn't hurt your confidence overall, especially like from the lineup with how many guys you had contributing.
Yeah, obviously, I think this is the best way to say it from our guy Python saying, Not mad, just disappointed. And to be honest, I kind of am because, they did have the lead in this game. They had some limited options from the bullpen. Let's just say that because of the bullpen game they played in game two. But, we go back to the home crowd, which we have not played in for a long time. And hopefully that gives them somewhat of a boost. They did their job. They stole one game in Philly. But, they were unable to finish out this one. And let's just say, I think that, overall command is just pretty much everything when it comes to facing this Phillies team. And they just missed a few spots. I talked about this in the pregame. I talked about it very thoroughly of not missing spots, especially Severino to some of the left-handed hitters as well. I think that, Harper eventually was going to get a hold of one. I mean, it's not like he was going to go just completely silent throughout this series. Of course, it came up in that big spot. The pitch to Castellanos was pretty brutal, I'm not going to lie, to tie the game. And then Edwin Diaz comes in. He gets the big strikeout in the seventh and then comes back out. Few ducks on the pond, let's just say that. And he just was unable to do it. He was like a few pitches away as well. It seemed like we were always at these 2 strike holes. He just couldn't finish it. And then McGill being like pretty much the only option now, pretty much their only option. Because if you're going to go to Ottavino, then you're pretty much sick in the head. The same thing goes for Danny Young. But, I think that, McGill, he did what he could. Like, it's either you give them the opportunities to beat you, or you pitch around the strike zone because these are really good hitters. And, I didn't like the matchup of the top of the lineup against McGill, especially just where he likes to locate. A lot of these guys really kill him that way, and it ended up that way. Couldn't get that final out there. I'm hoping that they can finish it off in Citi Field, but personally, like I said from the very beginning, you knew this wasn't going to be easy. It's not like the Mets just had momentum going in and they were just going to sweep this thing completely out. This is a really good Phillies team, and they will continue to be a good Phillies team until you knock them out and you don't have to see them anymore. And then we have two games at home, so hopefully they can win both of those. But if they win one of them, we'll see what happens. As for what goes on with the bullpen, I think that, again, it's all the buttons they could have possibly pushed. Like that. That's pretty much it. They just didn't get the job done, and that was pretty much the death of this game. Even though the Mets were able to keep pace until that bottom of the ninth. With the home run ball as compared to what the Phillies were doing, I think that, we'll see how it plays out at Citi Field. But, this one is a disappointing one. Let's just say that, considering the Mets led at one point. But it also gives you the reminder that this is a really good Phillies team.
Yeah, I feel like with Budo too. I mean, that's the other big piece is that Diaz came in the 7th inning, which really was not what they wanted to do. I feel like if Budo's able to kind of have that 1, 2, 3 inning, then Diaz comes into a clean inning in the 8th inning, facing the top half of the order. That was kind of what they wanted to do, but they couldn't. And they're in a tough spot right now where it's like, who can you trust? Because the last time we saw Budo before today was obviously game 3 against the Brewers, where he's given up back-to-back homers right away. So even then, just bringing him in, I felt a little uneasy. You use Reed Garrett for 2 innings, so he's not in. Stanek gives up the run yesterday. Maton still hasn't looked good once at all this week. So, and like you said, you're not going Ottavino, you're not going Danny Young, and you're not going Peterson. He's too tired. So really, like you said, you're kind of out of options here. It was Diaz and McGill as the 2, and if they don't get it done, then that's kind of where they're at right now. And Rangers makes a great point about not having Nunez, but also I think the really big thing is not having Rayleigh. Because, like I said, against this Phillies lineup with Schwarber, with Harper, if you have a nice lefty in there that you really trust, that makes a bit of a difference too. So when you're down 2 of your top guys in the bullpen, it is tough. Again, especially against this Phillies bullpen where they just kind of bring out all-star reliever after all-star reliever after all-star reliever. That is a really tough matchup. But even then, the Mets have been doing well against these guys. They got Hoffman yesterday. They got Schramm today. So they've been doing pretty good against them for the most part. But you can only do so much, especially just the sheer amount of pitching that the Phillies have also in the rotation. Like these guys, you never could get much of a blow up from them either. So you just know that when the bullpen is coming in, it's going to be these really close games, and there's just very little room for error. Like we said, you miss one pitch and this and that, it's gone, and that definitely just makes it really, really tough. This is a very hitter friendly ballpark as well, so I mean that's another thing that goes into it. Even though a lot of the shots the Phillies had were absolute no doubters, but overall, like I feel like that kind of plays into how careful you are with your pitching. But it definitely was frustrating, like especially those two strike counts with McGill, like going that slider just hanging right over the middle. Definitely was tough. I felt like his splitter was working pretty good tonight. I would maybe go with something like that, a little safer, but overall it just didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, they just couldn't get that final piece to get this one go, and that's kind of how it looks, where they just couldn't come up big where it really mattered there on the mound. And I think that it's a Diaz blown game. You can definitely put him in the blame game as well. I'm sure that Mets fans continue to go through the motions the way that they do. Like these comments, which I don't blame anybody for saying them, but saying it's apparently clear that Diaz can't pitch with runners on. Well, one thing I will say, statistically, that's not true. They are an OPS below. Hitters are OPS below 450 against him with runners on base. One, that's not true. Two, if your $102 million closer cannot pitch with runners on, then you have an even bigger problem than you think that you do. And I mean, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. I think that Diaz is going to be fine. I'm not someone who overreacts to Diaz. We all know how big of the Diaz supporter I will continue to be. He just didn't have it, and he just didn't get to finish what he could finish. And they didn't want to have him face Schwarber in the 7th. They wanted to see him in the 8th. But Budo ended up walking the 9 hitter, I think, or like doing something.
They give up the hit.
Yeah, he gave it the hit. I mean, it's just like I think that we've gone through so many times, with relievers of the motions of how inconsistent they can be. Sometimes, we talk about the overall consistency of them just in general, but I feel like the circle of trust just continues to be that it's more.
It's not even a circle at this point. I mean, it's just
it's a solar system now. They just rotate in and out and in and out. I mean, I think that when it comes to Diaz, you're going to have to trust him, whether you don't trust him right now or not, because he just blew a game and we've gone through this motion since 2019. They're going to be using him in save situations. They're going to be using him in the 9th in these high leverage parts when when you're late in the game and you're facing the top of the order, they're going to put Diaz in, and that's the right move. So, when we talk about, Stearns' number one job being get a new closer, it's really hard to say something like that when your closer's making $102 million. So it's really hard to replace something like that. And even though I'm the one who does trust Edwin Diaz in those situations, and I know that he could get the job done if he's right, there's going to be times when he just doesn't have it, and it happens. Do I think that he will be sharper when he gets a full year of being healthy under his belt? Absolutely, but that we can't really wait for that right now. We're in the postseason. It'll do what it'll do. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. And then, McGill, I guess, was the only option there. Like we said, the only guys available was Ottavino and Danny Young. You weren't going to go to them. I think that it pretty much set up the chain reaction of guys like just not, getting the job done. Budo could not put away the 9-hole hitter. Diaz could not get that final strike against, Bryson Stott or something. And then McGill couldn't get that final strike against Castellanos to end it off. I mean, they just could not get that final one pitch to go, and it pretty much changed the entire trajectory of the game. It happens. But as for the offensive side, I do obviously want to give the big shout out to Mark Vientos, who had an absolute incredible game. Let's just say that. Coming through to break the ice, then tying the game in the 9th with just complete ice in his veins. I mean, these guys have just come through like crazy. We're starting to see a little bit more of the power. Somebody did ask me, I forget who it was in the pregame, saying if we're due for home runs. I said yes. I didn't expect it to happen against somebody like Sanchez, who's a big contact manager. But I expected to. I'm expecting a lot of power to be on display against Nola if he does mix those pitches. But we'll see what happens. Again, like we said, this was not going to be easy. I said from the beginning, before this series even started, if the Mets win it, they're going to win it in 5 games. I hope that they win the next 2 games, and I'm completely wrong, and we can have some off days going into the National League Championship Series. But now it is a completely different series now. It is best of 3. It is a 3-game set. Whoever wins 2 moves on. Again, I think that, it's easy to say that, the bullpen just didn't have it, and they just couldn't do the job. Elaine Whitman saying Diaz has blown 3 games this week. This isn't a one-off problem. He can't be the closer next year. Tough shit. I mean, he's getting paid $102 million. I mean, what else can you really say? You're going to offload that contract? Who's going to take it? Who's going to take that contract? Diaz is worse than Familia? Absolutely not. I think that, we're just going through that Diaz motion, I don't know.
It's different workloads too. I mean, they talked about Diaz throwing 105 pitches in however many days, which he's never done. No closer has really ever done. And then this year he has a lot of up downs. So Familia was a 1-inning pitcher in just a totally different scenarios. They're asking Diaz to go like way more than with any other relievers. So I don't think it's apples to apples because the situations are different. Not that Diaz has been great, but
Diaz,
Familia
Diaz has definitely not gotten the job done. No,
yeah,
absolutely not. But again, like, you're in this scenario where you're paying him all this money. He ain't going anywhere. Like, he's not going anywhere. That's the reality of the situation.
And listen, Hader had an awful series for the Astros too that got them eliminated, and he's the other reliever that's getting paid crazy money. So, I mean, it's not just the Mets that have this issue. And even the Brewers, like Devin Williams, we talk about being one of the best relievers in baseball. He gave up the elimination game. And Diaz was actually that's the game Diaz was really good in, the one they were losing.
Yeah.
But he did go like almost 2 innings of that one. So, I mean, it's tough. I mean, you kind of have that. That's kind of like we talk about having a bullpen that has multiple like really good guys is better, because we don't end up overworking someone and having to have them do literally everything because it just becomes kind of unrealistic.
I feel like some of those arms that we don't have to back up what Edwin Diaz's workload is, they all got hurt. Brooks Raley could have been one of those pieces. Daniel Nunez is not healthy. I think that's kind of just one of those factors as to where, yes, this bullpen can definitely be better. Absolutely. And they need to come through. I think that when it comes to Edwin Diaz, the whole situation of just like going through these motions of Edwin Diaz of saying, well, you can't be the closer. It's done. They got to move on from him. It's not really as simple as that right now. I mean, no one is going to take his contract off if you get rid of it. I mean, and also this is another thing that you said as well, like, who is going to close? Like, who else is going to close? Like, who are they going to go to? Like, who exactly is going to be the guy that they choose? Who is going to be the guy that they choose to be the dominant closer that Diaz can be at his best? I mean, I don't see any way to look at it. If you're going to pay, like, this is what I mean. Like, if you're going to pay $102 million to a setup guy, you're not going to get the value that you want. And it's just not going to happen. I mean, do we just bring back David Robertson, just say, oh, well, he has saves in his career, and let's bring him back? Like, we're just going through this motion again, because then Diaz is going to dominate the next time out. And then we're just going to say, oh, I love Edwin Diaz. I love the trumpets. And then he'll blow a game. And then everybody wants him gone. I mean, we go through this so many times that I'm like, okay, this discussion is ridiculous.
I have an issue. Why? I don't know why I'm realizing. Why does the American League have an off day today? And why does the American League have more off days than the National League?
No clue. I have no clue.
That's insane.
Is it football? Is it football that maybe they can't broadcast as many?
I don't give a you know what. That's crazy. How is that fair that the American League has more days off than the National League? That's insane. And not just for the Mets, but for all the teams. Like even if like say the Braves were still in or whatever. Like
Yeah,
why does the American League have an extra off day than the National League? Like
no clue.
who decided that? Was that the All-Star game reward? I mean, what is that? I don't get that. That's crazy.
Is that home field advantage thing still a thing?
No, it's not.
Okay,
Like
thank God.
I just who made that? Like how did that happen?
I don't know.
That makes no sense to
I
me.
mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, again, it's just like in terms of like the whole thing with Edwin Diaz. Like I
Because
said,
here's the thing: is that
we
like let's say National League did have an off day, right? Let's say it was an off day.
yeah,
Then Diaz is more effective. You probably have Garrett. You have a
sure.
more rested boot. Like it changes everything for everybody. Even the Phillies bullpen is super tired. Like you have, I don't. I just don't understand why
I'm not
one
trying.
league
I'm
has
not
more
trying to
off days
make
than the other.
excuses here.
That's
Like
just
I'm not
weird.
trying to make excuses here whatsoever when it comes to Edwin Diaz and his workload. He had to get the job done. He didn't get the job done today. But what I'm saying is the reality of the situation is who is going to be your closer at that, and when that closer does replace him, you're going to hate him as well because he'll blow the game too. Because every closer blows games. I don't know what to say anymore. We have this conversation every time that he blows a save, and then he gets right back out there and he does his job. Like it's just it will continue to be the back and forth thing. I'm just so tired of this discussion. We've had this discussion since 2019. We've had this discussion for as long as our show has been on our even past that. Since we've known each other, we've had this discussion. I mean, I don't know how many times we can do this when also you're locked into him for another like what 3 years now, $102 million reliever. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I don't know what to tell you anymore. If you don't trust him, you don't trust him. At the end of the day, I trust him, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I trust that he can get the job done, and when he doesn't get the job done, that's bad. That's not good. But it's off to the next because if we dwell on it like it was in 2019, the situation's just going to get worse. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
well, I think too is that like you lock him into the contract, not knowing that he's going to tear his knee in a WBC celebration. He's not throwing 102 anymore. Like that really just makes things even tougher.
true. And do I think that he will be throwing 102 again? Absolutely, but not at this point. Like it's probably going to take an off season for him to ramp up in that way. I think that we'll see. I mean, I don't know what to say. And for those of you in the chat right now, I'm personally, I know I say you're not being ignored, but I'm perfectly ignoring this discussion because we just continue to have this every single time that he blows a game,
Yeah.
and nothing will change because they still have confidence in the guy that he can still get the job done. So I don't know what to tell you
Yeah,
anymore. If you don't trust
let's
him,
see
you
how the
don't
rest of the
trust him.
series goes.
Whatever.
We'll see how the rest of the
We'll
series
see.
goes. If it happens a couple more times, then we do need to
Yeah,
talk
then we
about it.
probably do
But
have the discussion.
yeah,
But
but let's
it's
just kind
just
of wait it out.
it's enough already. I can't do this like every goddamn time. I mean, it's not even just me as a Diaz defender. It's just I'm tired of repeating the same garbage over and over again. But other than that, let's give a full-on rundown of the actual game summary. In the first and the second inning, the Mets and Phillies would exchange stranding runners in scoring position. But as for the third inning, after a one-out single by Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos would open the scoring on a two-run homer to the opposite field to make it 2-0. In the sixth inning, Pete Alonso would add on to the lead with a solo shot to right to make it 3-0. But the Phillies would fight back after a two-out single by Trey Turner. Bryce Harper would make it a one-run game with a two-run homer. And Nick Castellanos would follow that up to tie the game with another homer at 3. That would end Severino's day after finishing the inning. 6 innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, no walks, 7 strikeouts on 91 pitches. In the 7th, Brandon Nimmo would respond from the Phillies tying the game with 2 out and nobody on, blasting a solo shot to right to give the Mets the lead right back. Jose Butto would come on in relief for Severino after hitting the first batter and walking the 9-hole hitter. The Mets would turn to Edwin Diaz to face Kyle Schwarber, and he would strike him out to end the frame. Edwin Diaz would come out for the 8th, and it did not go well, as we said. After a one-out walk to Harper, Castellanos would single to make it first and third with one out. Bryson Stott would drive in the tying and go-ahead runs on an RBI triple. Tyler McGill would come on, and while running on contact, Mark Vientos would drop a ground ball on the transfer, and Bryson Stott would score to make it 6-4. In the ninth inning, the Mets, we all know, don't go away easily. That's just been their identity. After a one-out single from Lindor, Vientos would tie the game on a massive two-run homer to left. But, of course, in the bottom of the inning, Tyler McGill would come out for the ninth and walk a pair to set up Castellanos for the game-winning RBI single to tie this series up at 1 and walk off the Mets, which now brings us to a pivotal Game 3 at Citi Field on Tuesday night. So, obviously, the full-on takeaways from this game, we know the bullpen played a big factor in this loss, of course, just not being able to get the job done, as we said. But let's just say the offense definitely came to play as compared to Game 1. What'd you see from the offense, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, I saw like you show a lot of good things, especially from Vientos in that two hole. I really like him there. I feel like they're going to leave it this time around. I feel like they've kind of done a little bit. Then they move Iglesias back up, and Vientos struggles, and it kind of goes back and forth. But I really like that Lindor Vientos combo 1-2. I feel like again, your best hitters should be batting at the top of the order, more plate appearances. So I definitely want to see them keep that going. And just seeing Nemo continue to be productive. Alonso, his home run also was opposite field again. Now he is hitting wall scrapers, but at least he's hitting them. You know what I mean? With the way it's been going for him, you take him how you can
Better
get him. I
contact
mean,
than what he was making.
yeah, they all count the same. So we're happy about that. What I did like though was just Marte was really just fishing off this. He looked just totally lost. He's just kind of whiffing at everything. And then Bader gets the start because Taylor's been struggling and not any better. That's not really a surprise, unfortunately. So they do have a bit of a problem right now offensively in center field, as both these guys are not contributing. And someone mentioned that they had an opportunity with Bader with a couple guys on, two outs. You could go to Winker there if you want to try to get some insurance runs. Once again, they didn't, and Bader doesn't come through. So I wonder how that whole dynamic's going to go. Are they going to go back to Taylor? Are they going to stick with Bader? It kind of is like a really tough one. You're kind of just like picking between defense, and the other guy's a little more offensive upside. So that definitely is a bit of a dilemma they have in their lineup. But I think overall, there still were some missed opportunities with men on base. Overall, you definitely feel like they could have gotten more. But when you're facing this tougher pitching, it is challenging to do that as far as, like we said, string together so many hits consecutively. And I think the other thing that was probably the most frustrating is that up until the Bryce Harper homer, I felt like Severino was pitching a really good game. He didn't walk anyone. Strikeouts were up. Velo was good. And even the homer he gave up to Harper, I'm pretty sure it was like 99 on the gun. I just can't believe that he missed with the fastball by that much. Like it was as middle could be in a 2-2 count. And I thought the Mets were going to maybe pitch around Harper in that AB, it seemed like. And even if they did that with Castellanos hitting a homer next batter, it ended up not really mattering because Castellanos was still having a really good game. So that definitely kind of also hurt the whole strategy. It's like you want to try to avoid Harper, but if you got Castellanos swinging a hot bat now, that really just makes this Phillies lineup even more challenging to navigate around. So that was kind of one of the things that stood to me is I feel like Sevi was having a good game, and I was hoping that if he could keep it going, we could have not needed as much from the bullpen because of how well he was going. But it just kind of ended up not working out. The walk to Turner was absolutely killer. I mean, you can't put anybody on for free in front of Harper with how good he's been swinging it. So that definitely was another really big issue. And even though Trey is a great hitter in his own right, I still feel like with just how good Bryce has been, especially against Severino. I mean, you have to remember they mentioned on the broadcast, but Severino's last start in CBP,
Mentioned
Bryce
it in the
Harper hit.
pregame, too.
Yeah, Bryce Harper hit two home runs against Severino in the middle of the game, which also like Severino was going good, and then Bryce Harper happened, and all of a sudden it's not a good start anymore. So this is now two times this has happened with Bryce. So, and you just know in the postseason and in general he's just that good that you have to be very scared and just kind of you have to be very careful with how you attack him and how you approach those at bats.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you really pitch to these guys when you do make mistakes at the bottom of the order, which is kind of just what happened towards the end of that game there with Tyler McGill, I mean, he got like the 9 hitter, and then he got Schwarber, and then Turner, and then Harper. He had to walk. Was it? He got Schwarber out in a pop up.
Yeah, Harper
Um,
walked.
yeah,
And I think
Harper
Turner got
ended
a
up
hit. I think
walking.
Turner singled.
Turner singled or something, but they definitely. I don't even know what you really do pitching around him to get that final out with the meat of the order coming up. To be honest, what do you exactly do when you're, Tyler McGill? Like, to be honest, like, you could try and get them to chase, but they're going to be hunting for their pitch, of course. So, I mean, there's really nothing that, they could really, like, I just didn't really see
Oh no, Turner
any
was a walk
point.
as well. Yeah, so you got to
Turner
stop
was a
walking
walk. Yeah.
Turner. Yeah, that needs to stop.
Yeah. Obviously, putting Turner on the base pass is a big threat, of course. When it comes to Bryce Harper, that's definitely not somebody that you want to pitch to in that scenario. And I feel like just walking him was probably the best thing to do. With Castellanos, they got ahead 0-2 on him, and they just couldn't finish it.
And that pitch was
McGill just couldn't finish
also
it.
like so middle, the slider that he hung, like it's going to get crushed. Like there's like missing a location, but when you miss that middle, like
Yeah.
middle, it's going to get killed.
I
Especially the
personally
slider.
don't even know. I don't even know why they even have McGill throw sliders anymore when he has a cutter. Like, I
Yeah,
just don't get it. Like, I
yeah, that's a
really
good
have no
point.
idea why they even like, because he just hangs so many of them,
Mhm.
and the shape's just not good in general.
Yeah.
He has not been able to locate a slider good for like 2 years now. Like, for some reason, they shouldn't do that. But again, hindsight is 2020. It just, they could not get that final out, that final strike, that final whatever you're talking about it. It's just they couldn't finish it off, and that's what good teams do against you. That's what good hitters do. They're good two-strike hitters. They're good situational hitters. They weren't going to score 2 runs like they did in game one. We knew that this Phillies offense was going to come firing back, and they did. They woke up. They're a good team. They are postseason tested, like we've said. This is a atmosphere that they've excelled at in the last 2 seasons. They haven't finished the job, but they've made a lot of noise in the postseason. And I feel like that is I feel like it's a good thing considering the wake up call that it gave you that this is not going to be an easy series and nobody should be sagging off. But it also just tells you that, they just got to finish the job and hopefully they can put away batters a little bit better in their favorable environment in Citi Field in game 3 and game 4. Anything you want to
Yeah,
add?
I think with McGill, I was happy to see him get up to 98 on his velocity. I thought that was a really good sign. But to your point with the slider, I feel like he would definitely benefit more from a sweeper than a slider if he's going to have like one of
He
those
has
breaking
one.
pitches.
I don't think he's using it.
Yeah, and I think like obviously you would love to see him pitch similar to his brother in the bullpen, where like he doesn't have that many pitches and is just throwing a ridiculous amount of velocity, but their deliveries are so different that Tyler is not going to be able to generate that velocity that his brother does. But I feel like it's something that if you could tweak it to where you make him more fastball, cutter, splitter, sweeper, change his delivery to trying to exaggerate velo a little more, maybe you could turn him into a good reliever as well. But as of right now,
Yeah.
they just kind of what they have at this point.
Yeah, I think there's a different arm angle between him and Trevor McGill. I think he's a little bit more over the top. McGill is a little bit more like he's actually a little bit more like what's his name?
Yeah, Trevor's like falling back
Reliever.
kind of. It reminds me like almost like Trevor Hoffman. Like he kind of like a lean back, like with the way he's like coming down. It's
Yeah,
like a
he
very
gets a lot of
tricky
leverage from
delivery.
over the top. That's
Yeah,
his thing. Yeah, and then
and
of course
he's
the
taller too,
ridiculous.
right?
Yeah,
The
he's
brother.
6 foot
Yeah,
8.
yeah,
Six
that's
foot eight.
crazy.
Yeah,
He
he's a
gets
monster.
insane
Yeah,
extension. Yeah.
absolutely. And we'll see what happens. It's weird with Trevor McGill. Of course, I don't want to go into like full analysis with him, but fastball curveball is usually not a mix that does well, but he's able to kind of use it as a little bit more of like a change up to drop. So it tunnels well, I guess, but we'll see what happens regarding Tyler McGill. I don't think that it was a great matchup in that ninth inning. But you had no choice. Again, like, were you going to put Adam Ottavino in there? Like, no one was going to do that. Nobody was, available that could actually just like I feel like Stanek was probably the only guy you probably could have put in there, but he struggled yesterday. And then also, he's pitched a lot in this postseason so far. You're running out of options. It's the same kind of argument that we've had, talking about Diaz replacing him as the closer. Who's going to be your closer? Like, who exactly are you gonna you gonna sign a Aroldis Chapman? You gonna who are you gonna bring in? You're gonna trade Diaz for Hader with the Astros. I mean, like, it's unrealistic. Like, who's gonna take on that Diaz contract? That's basically the reality of the situation, and that's kind of how we kind of look at it from the bullpen aspect of it. And it just basically they just could not finish the job this time. And when it comes to the two-strike hitting, the Phillies did it fairly well at the end of the game. Now, speaking of the full-on result, the full-on performance, let's get to singling some players out. Of course, let's get to studs and duds of this game. Frank, I will go to you with your stud, one player that played well in this game. You want to give your props to, one player that did not. We all know the drill by now. Frank, your stud of this game.
Yeah, it has to be Vientos. I mean, he got things started early with the home run, and he got things back with the home run later on, but also had a double in between. He did have a mishap at third base, and it was a play that he rushed. And honestly, I feel like even if he got to it, he would have had to play the plate anyway. I just think it was hit too slowly. So that definitely was a little frustrating. But overall, again, just a young player, his first full year, his first time in the playoffs to already swing such a good bat overall in this postseason has been a great sign. As like we've said, just as far as like this is a guy that needs to be part of your nine, where he is in the nine as far as third, first, or DH. With that bat, you find somewhere. Like he will be in the equation somewhere, somehow, some way. And just with the way he's swinging, he's got to stay in there. And like I said, right now, I like him in that 2 spot, and I want to see him stay there.
Yeah, I mean, he's willing to swing. We all know it. And when he sees something in his wheelhouse, he is going to crush it because he is just naturally powerful the way that he is.
Yeah, his second home run, he pulled an outside pitch, and like they said, it was like at his neck, and it's away, and he still just pulled it.
That's a strong
like,
man. That's a strong man.
Crazy.
That is a strong man right there. But when it comes to Vientos, I mean, yes, you're still going to have the strikeouts. You're still going to have some of the swing and miss game. But overall, when you come to competitive ABs, Mark Vientos has been giving you those throughout the entire postseason. We haven't seen much of the power until this game, and then he gave us 2 home runs, that were really big to take a commanding lead and then tie the game in the 9th. Couldn't finish the job, but again, it was a great appearance from Mark Vientos, pretty much being the star of this game if the Phillies did not come back. The double and 2 home runs, great performance. I got to give it to Brandon Nimmo. 2-hit game. He's definitely looked a lot better, let's just say, so far in this series as compared to Milwaukee. He's had a few decent hits, but also just the 2-strike approach from him has been so much better. I know that he had that big hit against Devin Williams, we all know, in that game 3. He had the big hit yesterday. And then today he had the home run to give us the lead to respond right back, prevent a shutdown inning, and give the Mets the lead once again. And we know Brandon Nimmo, he is one of the big contributors. We know that he's had a rough week with his grandmother passing away, so it was good to see him, still get the job done. Definitely something to bring some joy to a guy who always brings joy to everyone. So he definitely had a good game. But of course, Vientos is that one guy you can put out there. He had an incredible game today, and it sucks we couldn't finish it out because he was the main contributor there. But again, he has been put in a tough position. Let's just say that for a young kid. And again, he has just ran away with the job. As for duds in this game, I think they're pretty much obvious, but we're going to have to establish them. Frank, I'll go to you.
Yeah, as much as I want to say Bader, honestly, I kind of expect 0 for 4 for him. So I can't say he like was below my expectations. For me, it's Marte because Marte has been good this
Yeah.
postseason. He's gotten a good amount of hits, but the strikeouts are just they really hurt. It's just not productive ABs, and especially with everybody else in line besides Bader having hits, you would like to see Marte kind of capitalize on that. Like you have some opportunities. But for him to take the 0-4 with the strikeouts, especially with a lot of the chasing that was involved, it was pretty frustrating.
Yeah, Marte was one of the players I had to watch going into this game. He's had some really good numbers against Christopher Sanchez in the past. Did not happen today. So definitely that was in terms of expectation. I can 100% agree on that one. And then easily, I mean, I got to give it to my guy. I know you guys always hand it to me to hold him accountable because he's my guy. But yeah, he didn't have it. He couldn't finish it, and that definitely was a backbreaker. I'm not saying that Budo did not help. McGill didn't help either, but of course the big hit came off of Diaz. I think it was a 2-strike count as well. They just couldn't finish it, and it definitely was on Diaz for why they were in the position that they were in the ninth. Sure, they tied it, and he got bailed out by Vientos. But the bullpen definitely had a limited amount of options. So, we knew that coming into it with a bullpen game in game one. So definitely a different situation to be in. But as for other things that I want to mention, of course, I don't know what happened with this when Nimmo hit this home run, but did you see like they were talking about trying to I don't know if it was just the ESPN or no, excuse me, Fox just trying to bring up a narrative or something. But Nimmo like chirping with Real Muto,
It seemed like Real Muto was saying something, and Nemo's like, "What are you saying?" And like they were saying something to him, they didn't show the camera angle only shows Nemo talking though. They did not put a camera on Real Muto to show what he was saying. So Nemo was saying something like as he's crossing home plate, and then afterwards he's still saying something, but he was saying it in a very like calm. I wasn't like yelling or going like crazy, but again with Nemo, just knowing him, there's no way he said anything too wild. But I feel like he was just saying like, "What are you trying to say? Like, what are you saying?" Like I feel like that's what he said.
yeah,
But I'm not sure.
probably. I mean, it's loud in the
Maybe
ballpark. You
the
probably couldn't hear it.
professional lip
I don't
reader
know.
could figure this one out too.
Yeah, maybe it'll happen. I have no clue, but we all know that the one guy on this team that you can guarantee is not trying to pick a fight is Brandon Nimmo. Like, come on, like that's
But he was
actually
going at Michael
ridiculous.
Harris though a little bit in that Atlanta game
Yeah,
when he hit the homers.
a little little bit of trolling. He did a
Yeah,
little trolling.
he's getting there.
And then speaking of Nimmo as well, the two studs that we had here, that collision in the ninth as well to get that final out. I almost
That
shit
drove me
myself when
nuts.
that happened. Let's
That
just
drove me
say
nuts.
that.
It's
Um,
outfielder's fault, and Nimmo's literally calling for it.
yeah,
Like if you're the
yeah,
third baseman
obviously,
and you're in like left field, you're in the wrong spot. Like there's a
yeah,
left fielder.
absolutely, yeah. I'm glad to see that Nimmo was able to shake it off. He's okay. But for a second, he looked like he was having a rough time there. But as for some other things that we can talk about in referring to your dud in Marte, Christopher saying it's possible that he is still hurt from that pitch from yesterday. I think he took like one off the elbow or the
Yeah, it took like
forearm,
right
something.
here,
Yeah.
left to like forearm wrist
In the
area,
first
which I think
game,
it's kind of similar to where McNeil got hit, but Marte was too tough. He had so much muscle he was able to absorb it. McNeil was just
yeah,
straight.
obviously. We already know like the combination of noodles and non-noodles on this team. Who's strong and who's not. But I really, when it comes to Marte, and this is a bad thing, and this is bad when I say it. It's going to sound bad, but when it comes to Marte, I kind of just expect him to be banged up all the time. Like I do, and like if he was as banged up as he was, he probably should have been batting seventh or batting eighth. They have to move Alvarez up in the lineup because he definitely has had a lot better ABs, in my opinion. He still has had some swing and miss,
I
but
think
he's
what they're
definitely putting the ball
trying
in play
to
better.
do is trying to balance out the contact guys and power guys because like with
Mhm.
Iglesias batting after Alonso, and then you have Marte bat like because I feel like if you went like Alonso, Martinez, Alvarez, it's just too much swing and
Mhm.
miss. I feel like they're trying to, especially runners on base, trying to break it up with contact hitters. So I understand the philosophy, but I also understand what you're saying too.
Yeah, obviously, when it comes to Jose Iglesias, like he hasn't been amazing in this series so far, but in the middle of the lineup, when you need a hit with runners in scoring position, he's come through a lot this year. So I understand making him bat fifth with these situational stuff. If I were talking about Iglesias going into this year, protecting Alonso or batting behind Alonso, I mean, I would say you're nuts. But when it comes to Alonso's struggles with runners in scoring position this year and um, Iglesias hitting the way that he has with runners in scoring position, that's kind of the protection that Pete needs right now. It's not really about him getting more pitches because he still is getting tons in the strike zone. It's about him like actually contributing the way that we want him to. Today he homered. It was great to see. To expand the lead, we definitely needed that homer after Severino gave up those back-to-back shots. When it comes to Severino, one other piece that I do want to get into, just another one of where he just could not finish it off. Two outs with nobody on in the sixth, and he gives up the base hit and then back to back homers. It just, they just could not get that final piece to push them across to finish it off. And that was pretty much the theme of this entire game for the Mets pitching staff. They just could not finish it off. One strike, one out. They just couldn't get that third out, that third strike. And that was pretty much the death of them in this game. But again, they fought back. They came back because this team is just so ridiculous. They just don't give up whatsoever. I've talked about it before so many times. You get punched in the gut, you punch right back even harder, and they just continue to do that. I wish we could have finished this game, but you know, at the end of the day, this is a good Phillies team, and this is going to be a good series, no matter what. It's going to be quite a battle, and I just hope that we don't hear Carlos Mendoza say that this team battled. So then, then we might have confidence going into the next game. Because if he does, then personally, I would say that this series is over. If I hear that we battled and we battled over and over again, I can't. Now, if he said that in one of those interviews, I didn't see any of it. But we'll see what happens. Of course, we got Game 3 coming up. As for other things that are going on in the chat, Ken saying that Sevi got too cocky on that second out, got sloppy. Yeah, he did like that weird. What was that? That like sidestep on first base, and that it seemed like he was feeling it, and then everything just fell apart. I think that he pitched a fantastic game. He still kept us in the game, of course. Obviously, that's kind of what you need in the postseason. You don't need just like, every single time Zach Wheeler type of stuff, like 7 scoreless innings, because it's not going to happen. You're playing a really good offense. I think that he pitched well. He definitely would be on the stud list if it wasn't for the ending, but, it happens. Talking about as well as with the center field hole, Tyrone Taylor has been good in this postseason, but not really like good enough to be a starting caliber player. Bader also was really bad today. Bader was someone that I also expected maybe to do something from the bottom of the order, mainly because he was facing
A
Sanchez.
left-hander, yeah.
Yeah, but nothing really crazy. I mean, yesterday he scored the tying run, I think, and then he had like another hit or something in the top of the ninth or something. Like he had a decent game coming off the bench. But now you're just kind of flip-flopping between Bader and Taylor, and you don't know about the uh the inner you don't know how these are going to intertwine with each other because they're both right-handed hitters. They both seem to be more dominant against left-handed hitters. Taylor just seems to just swing the bat, and if he makes contact, like that's his thing, and that's why he's probably the fourth outfielder. But I feel like that's just the back and forth of it. I think that you're going to see Taylor in Game 3. start in center field. I think that that's probably going to be what happens. I don't know if Taylor probably has some, I don't know, maybe he has numbers that are against Aaron Nola.
I feel
Also,
like he
another
hasn't
thing to
seen
look
him
out
much.
for.
I mean, maybe he
Also,
has.
maybe. I mean, he was in Milwaukee, right?
Yeah.
So, um, let's see. He is 4 for 10 against
That's
Aaron
actually
Nola.
very good
So there
numbers.
you go.
Wow. So he's definitely starting.
Yeah, so he definitely will start. Another thing that you could put in here as well against the right-hander with Martinez swinging a lot better, they could consider with Bader and Taylor not playing well that Winker plays left field and Martinez is in the game as well. You still have those defensive replacements.
You mean Marte, right?
Marte plays right.
Right.
Marte plays right. Nimmo in center.
Winker
And
and
then
left.
Winker in left field. You have Martinez as the DH.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have any bats off the bench in any situation in that.
But who would you be pinch hitting for? You'd just be pitching for Winker against a lefty, and then
you probably go to Taylor. Yeah, probably would go to Taylor in that way, or maybe Bader since
and
he's a lefty.
Honestly, I feel like the guy who's getting lost in the shuffle is Acuna. I mean, he got to such a good start, and I feel like he's just become a defensive replacement. Like that kind of stinks.
Yeah,
I'd rather have him getting ABs instead of Bader, to be honest. But I don't know. I would like to see them experiment, at least in spring training. Experiment with Acuna in center field just a little bit. Just try it.
Yeah.
See how it goes. Because I feel like if we could just have that as another option, that would really help us out right now.
Yeah. I mean, I really hope that we do have a little bit more of this equation figured out, with the offseason, of course, looming away of what is going to happen for the next year. When it comes to this outfield, they do have a deep outfield. It's just they don't have the star power that usual outfields usually have. Nimmo's your best outfielder. That's just pretty much it. And that's pretty much how it is. Explosive coming in here saying on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you about Game 3 and Game 4? Because it's a 10 for me. I think that since they kept pacing this game, I'm kind of on I'm probably a 5. Like I'm either way, I'm good with it. It's all of really how the momentum shifts into Citi Field.
Yeah, listen,
hopefully they embrace the crowd. Yeah,
to be honest, this team has gone as far as not as far as, but since 2015, this is the furthest they've gotten, and they haven't been home in a couple of weeks now. Because don't forget they finished the season Atlanta, Milwaukee. Now Philly, they haven't been home in 2 weeks. So this crowd has been waiting to see them and congratulate them on the wonderful week they had. So I think the atmosphere is going to be electric, one of the best it's ever been. And Manaea has been pretty good for us this year. So for Game 3, I feel pretty good. If they lose Game 3, then I'm panicking. But for Game 3, I feel pretty good.
Yeah, Game 3 for the the lefty matchups, like we have said. Is it possible that since you have a day off here with 2 days off, you might have Peterson available as well, maybe out of the pen? It's possible. Like when we were talking about Game 5 scaring the crap out of you, it should. It definitely should. And like I said,
hopefully
I personally believe.
5.
Yeah. Personally, again, I believe the only way the Mets win this series is in 5 games. I do think that this is going to go to 5 games if the Mets do win it. I do see them taking 1 game at Citi Field. Let's hope that they take another, because then they would be on their way to California either way, because they'd be playing San Diego or LA. But when it comes to the full-on matchup at home, the last time, again, this is another good point from Henry here, saying the Mets haven't been home since the last Sunday when they played the Phillies. So, I mean, if you want to really put narratives that way.
2 Sundays ago.
2 Sundays ago. And, we'll see
September
what happens
22nd.
again. Yeah, September 22nd. It's been a while. It definitely has been a while. So glad that they can fly home. They get an off day as well. You get a rest for the bullpen. That was definitely worked a lot in that first game. So we'll see what happens, of course. But, I think that when it comes to how they played out this game, they just, again, I'll say it one more time, They just couldn't get that final piece to push themselves over. And that came from Severino, Budo, Diaz, McGill. The offense, I think, the offense did its job. The offense did its job. But there still were some risk fails. But again, you're facing a good pitching staff with the Phillies, even though they've done well against that bullpen now. It's all about the atmosphere. Let's just say that. I think we'll see what happens. Stem coming in. Geez, what a brutal loss. Another Mendy pitching move mistake. Sevy should have been taken out before he faced Harper, and this game would be very different. You got to win too. I mean, here's the thing. When it comes to Mendy making a mistake, who are you going to go to? Like who's available? Garrett was not available. Peterson was definitely not available. You weren't going to go to Ottavino because nobody trusts him. I think that
Danny Young.
You weren't going to Danny Young.
Maton, like we said, Maton hasn't looked good. Stanek didn't look good last night. He used a ton. He pitched almost 30 pitches yesterday. And then Budo, we saw what happened anyway. So you feel, and honestly, and that's the thing too, is that like, let's say you pull Severino earlier, Budo couldn't even go 1. So how is Budo going to go 2? I mean, that's kind of where it gets tough. Is that if you pull Stevie earlier, then you're going to need more out of Diaz and more out of McGill. Like you're just kind of delaying the inevitable.
And this is a good point by Explosive here, saying if Budo finished that 7th, it's a whole different game. It is. We win with Vientos in home. Yeah, exactly. They definitely would. And it all really just had to come with walking the 9-hole.
Facing the number 9 hitter.
Yeah.
I mean,
he walked the 9-hole hitter, and I talked about this in our pregame in game 1 to start off this series. You got to attack that bottom third of the order. You do. You got to challenge them, and he was not able to do that.
It was
of course, you can definitely.
It was the infield hit, right? The one like Lindor couldn't pick up, I think. It says he singled to shortstop. It was like the backhand Lindor couldn't pick up. Clemens has speed, so it was tough.
Yeah, it was on the backhand. It was a tough angle. But
what really killed Budo? What really killed Budo too was the hit by pitch to Real Muto ahead in the count. That sinker ran in way too much. That to lead off the inning, that also really killed him too.
Yeah, I get a little bit. I get nervous as to where a little bit nervous to lead off walks than lead off singles, only because I feel like the pitcher just starts to press after that. But we'll see what happens for it. Phillips saying there's so many useless guys in this bullpen. There definitely are. Let's just say that. Do I believe Diaz is one of them?
Maybe Sean Reed Foley is here over Ottavino, but he's also out. Obviously, everyone's favorite Drew Smith, because he's so amazing. He would have had to be in the bullpen, but he's out.
Drew is in the bullpen. He was chilling with the guys, but he's out. He had Tommy John surgery. And unfortunately, he most likely has pitched his last game as a Met.
Never know until it actually happens. He could come back. Like, even if he doesn't come back now, he still could come back later.
I don't see. I don't really see them signing a guy fresh off of Tommy John surgery. I mean, they did it with.
No, I'm saying not now. I'm not saying now, but you never know. 7 years from now, he could show up.
Oh, what is he going to be like, perpetual Pedro? Or?
No, after Tampa. Tampa's going to fix him. That's going to pick him like 36 years old, and then there you go.
Sick. Diaz wasn't supposed to be one of those useless guys. I don't think he's useless. Again, this is just going through the motions. I don't even know what to tell you anymore. Like, again, this conversation we've had so many times. The Mets have definitely had a workload adversity. Let's just say that in this last week, it's been quite a gauntlet that they've gone through. For them to be tied going back home, finally have a day off. I think they're in a good spot at this current moment. They kept pace with this game. They just could not finish it. And hopefully those adjustments are made, of course. I still do feel good. And again, like we've said, even at the end of the day, even if they do end up losing this series, they did exceed expectations. We know that changes still do have to be made because there are some pieces with this team that, bring up the inconsistencies. But again, I think that overall, it still has just been a successful year. And like our co-host Andrew said, like our co-host Andrew said, this is all gravy. Like this is all just extra gravy on top of this feast that they have had since that June run that they started off getting back into the playoffs. I think that whatever happens, I mean, obviously, I still want to win. I'll be upset if they lose, but when it comes to the expectations that came with it, I think that they definitely have a step in the right direction. The main point of the postseason here is hopefully this is a every year occurrence. Like that's what we're going to look at. I'm hoping that it continues. I am hoping that this team, if they do lose, they still try to make improvements, because there's some things on this team that went well for them that I don't think are going to sustain to the next year. And that's just more of me being cautious. But when it comes to the playoffs here, they're still in it. It's tied 1-1. We're going back to Citi Field. The atmosphere is going to be nuts. And, again, this is postseason baseball. Like Christopher is saying, I'm feeling good. Postseason, breathe. This is all fun. All teams have things they can work on. Absolutely. Of course. And, again, like there's pieces to this team, that do obviously have to step up if they want to make a deeper playoff run. But, again, this is the postseason. Not everything is going to be in tip-top shape. But as for the tip-top shape, I can just say that the shape that they are in right now, stealing a game in Philly, they chested up in game 2. They're just going to have to play it out into Citi Field. Hopefully that day of rest can just reset everything. And this team, we've seen them bounce back so many times. I think that's kind of what we kind of look at. Daniel saying, thanks, Frank. I was at the Turning Stone Casino and missed the entire game.
Yeah, it's good for your blood pressure you missed it, honestly, because it was just such a range of emotions between feeling like you're going to lose and feeling like you're going to win and feeling like you're going to lose and actually lose. Like, it was a lot.
Yeah, and Explosive coming in saying that DeComo just posted that Diaz is through 130 pitches in the last 8 days, and I've talked about the workload of Evan Diaz allowing him to pitch, but yeah, that is a lot. It is
something that no reliever is used to.
Yeah, so it also can put you in the position where you're like, thank God we have an off day tomorrow. Like that. Thank God we do.
Listen, if we're in the American League, we could have had one today.
Yeah, it would have been nice. It would have been nice. But I feel like that would have just been the same amount of off days, right? No, travel. No, that would be too. Yeah,
because that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is that so? The basic
that's weird.
The American League is working is you play game 1, you get a day off. You play game 2, you get a day off. Like what?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's kind of crazy. I feel like it probably had just something to do with football. That's probably what it is. I don't know. Like, even though some of these series are on TBS and like, I don't know. It probably just had more to do with football. Of course, you never want to interfere with the NFL. Long live the Shield. Never interfere. Never interfere with them. You never go after them at any point. I'm sure they received some death threats.
Honestly, the Mets got bumped to FS1 anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah, so like that isn't even really an excuse. Like,
true.
And you have the earlier times. Like you had you had done a 1 o'clock on FS1. No,
hey, NFL, don't take any eyes off the NFL. Never take the eyes off the NFL. All right, they will take you down. All right, I am sure that the NFL is in feuds with the MLB for having our postseason during football season. They're probably very, very
honestly,
pissed.
It's weird the way the networks do. It's like what ESPN gets the wild card, then Fox and TBS get NLDS. Like it's just all over the place. It's like every series is a different channel. Like
they're just spinning a wheel at this point. It's just like spinning a wheel. Yeah. I don't know. Let's just say it's just a weird sequence. Let's just say that the scheduling has definitely not been friendly to the Mets, but they've held it off fairly well. I do think that they have tough loss again, like we said. I think that we'll see what happens in this series. Again, this is a whole new series. It's best of 3. It's just like that wild card series, We'll see what happens. Again, I hope that they can close it out at home. I personally think the only way they close it out is in 5 games, like I said already. But let's just say if they lose game 3, then I would start to worry a little bit in terms of the pitching matchups that you have up. Like, even though Quintana has pitched well in that game 3, I don't know if he really matches up fairly well with this Phillies lineup as he did with the Brewers. So we'll see what happens, of course, with the rest of it. And, again, like we've said, it's been a great run. All we can do is be proud of this team, and hopefully that they're looking at things to get better. And that's what I trust David Stearns to do. But we're still in this, guys. We're still in this. One loss doesn't take you down. Let's not forget we lost game 2 against Milwaukee too. So maybe we can continue the script of winning game 3 and then finishing this one off. We'll see what happens. Again, the Mets have done very well with their backs against the wall all year. So we'll see what happens. Again, like one of our guys, Anthony Rivera, said on my pregame, like their postseason began in that Arizona series, like all the way back there. I mean, they've been fighting for their lives for a long time. So, they're used to it. So we'll see what happens. Again, we knew this was not going to be an easy series. We're going to cut it off here. Usually it would be a little bit longer if we had a 3-man panel, but we just have 2. And we don't want to dwell on this loss any longer. We want to get into the off day, refresh ourselves, and then get into game 3. So, for those of you who are in here, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you have not already. Turn on post notifications to not miss our pregame show for game 3, which will be on Tuesday. I'm not really sure of the timing. I'm sure Frank will let me know in like a couple of seconds. But as for
5 o'clock, I think it is
5 o'clock. Okay, so
3:30
will most likely be our next pregame. Yeah. And then, of course, our post games, that will be episode number 93 and 94 for game 3 and 4. Post-game coverage continues as the Mets are still in this. Again, it's not one and done, folks. It's not like that here. Other than that, we'll see you guys next time. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and on TikTok for future content over there. Follow everyone individually, including our third Mike, Andrew, who was not able to make it. He will most likely, for those of you who are big Andrew stans out there, he said that he will definitely try to make game 3 and 4 post games no matter what. But we'll see. Maybe sometimes he gets stuck on food. Sometimes he loses his way to his setup, and then all hell breaks loose, and that's just kind of how what's happening. But other than that, game 3 pregame on Tuesday at 3:30. We will see you guys next time. Of course, let's go Mets. Rough loss today, but I'm sure that this team, as they've done all year, will bounce back. Let's go Mets, and we'll see you guys next time.